My wife was my love since high school. We started dating in 1992 when we were both 17 years old. Now we're both 45, and we've been together ever since. She's the only woman I've ever been with. We got married 5 years later, at 22, right after college. A year later, we had our first of 2 sons. I gave her 23 years of my life, built us a home, worked my ass off to give her the life she dreamed of. Sure, we had rough patches, but what couple doesn't? Even during the toughest times, we found a way to work through things and came out stronger. That's why the news of her affair hit me like a ton of bricks. In March 2020, I first felt something was off in our relationship. 2 months prior, we'd hit a rough patch. I was recovering from knee surgery. I'd torn my ACL in the fall of 2019 and still couldn't move around properly. At that point, I only had about 55% mobility in my knee. It affected a lot of things around the house. I was on workers' comp since I got injured on the job, and I couldn't handle my usual chores. My sons helped where they could, but some tasks only I could do had to be put off or passed to my wife, which she wasn't happy about. Our intimacy had also nearly disappeared. She'd already been reluctant before my injury, but now it had completely stopped. During those months, she, let's call her Anna, started spending more time with coworkers after work. From November 2019 to March 2020, it became a regular thing. Naturally, I didn't think much of it. In 23 years, I'd never had a reason to doubt her or distrust her. She had her friends, I had mine, plus our shared circle. I also hung out with my friends often, and it was never an issue. Around January 2020, I noticed something strange. Anna started pulling away from me. Yeah, we were having issues, but she'd never denied me affection before. The usual hugs and kisses she'd give me stopped. Her phone was always in her hand long before I got suspicious, but before, she'd constantly show me stuff from the internet, craft ideas, Pinterest recipes, memes, you name it. Now, she became more secretive about her phone. Her communication with me became sharper, like I was annoying her. So, it's March 2020, the pandemic hits, and New York goes into lockdown. Our jobs were essential, so we didn't have to work from home. I'd just been cleared to return to work after 5 months of recovery, and I was eager to get back to it. 5 months on disability, rehabbing my knee, and not being able to be physically active drove me crazy. I love being active. I'm into martial arts and usually hit the gym 4 times a week, not to mention all the household chores I handled. A week or 2 into the lockdown, my wife tells me she'll have to stay late at work. Again, I didn't think much of it because of the nature of her job. I figured it'd be every other day, but no. She was staying late every day, and not just an hour or 2. She'd come home 3 or more hours late, head straight to the shower, spend a little time with me, a little time with our 17-year-old son. Our older son, 22, lives with his girlfriend in another borough, and then go to bed. As my knee got better, we started being intimate again. But, as you've probably guessed, she wasn't emotionally or mentally present, which I noticed pretty quickly. By early April, things started to become clear to me. All the signs pointed to her having an affair. That's when I decided I needed answers. I started digging online for information on what to look for, found lists of signs of cheating, and sure enough, she matched almost all of them. After that, I expanded my search and started looking for ways to gather proof. I started with her social media. Looking through her Facebook posts from the previous months, everything seemed normal. Pictures of me and the boys, pictures with her friends, and a few photos of her after-work hangouts with coworkers. Those photos included her close work friends and a few people I'd never met. But I noticed one recurring thing in many of the photos. One guy was always standing way too close to my wife. His hand was on her shoulder or around her waist, way too close for someone I'd never met. That didn't sit well with me, to say the least. But that wasn't even the worst part. Turns out, this guy was her Facebook friend and followed her on Instagram. I decided to check out his Facebook page, and guess what I found? He'd blocked me. Why the hell would a stranger block me from seeing his page but be friends with my wife on Facebook? Yeah, that's when I started playing detective, Batman style. By then, I wasn't in denial anymore. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy. My task was to find out how long it had been going on. And throughout April and May, that's what I did. I can't even begin to describe how much information I was able to uncover once I started digging. We were on a family cell phone plan, and I was able to access a lot of data. My soon-to-be ex-wife's call history was telling. The two numbers she interacted with the most, from October 2019 to April 2020, were mine and a number I'd never seen before. Guess whose number it was? A quick Google search confirmed it was the guy from the photos who'd blocked me on Facebook. Let's call him Mark, because that's who he is. Now the picture was becoming clearer. But many of their messages were deleted, which meant she was deleting some of them. I knew she was cheating on me with this guy, but I didn't have concrete proof. I needed more evidence. That's when I told my best friend Ozzy what I'd found. He asked if I'd confronted her with the facts, and I said no, because I didn't feel like it was enough. Then he told me about an app I could install to spy on her communication in real time. I installed it, synced it to our plan, and started waiting. Within a few days, I finally saw the proof. Texts between them about how much fun they'd had the night before and how they planned to do it again over the weekend. Boom, gut punch. Saying I was stunned would be an understatement. I think that moment was the turning point. For the next 2 days, I was a wreck. I consciously distanced myself from her during that time, which she definitely noticed. She tried to comfort me and asked what was wrong, but I brushed her off and avoided her. I couldn't even look at her. The woman I'd given 23 years of my life, the woman I'd given everything I could and more. And she cheated on me with a guy only 5 years older than our oldest son. By the third day, I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. I reached out to Ozzy to let him know my suspicions had been confirmed. He asked if I'd talked to my wife about it. I said no, and I told him I wanted revenge. I didn't just want to divorce her. I wanted to punish her. I wanted to leave her life in ruins, completely destroy her. That would take time, and I came up with a plan. While Googling about infidelity, I came across a quote that stuck with me. The enemy of infidelity is unpredictability, or something like that. That became the foundation of my plan. I was going to make her life hell while secretly plotting my exit strategy. Early June, I still had the app installed. Almost every night, I gathered as much data as I could, watching their conversations. They were acting like they were in a full-blown relationship, sexting, exchanging romantic messages, nudes, the whole 9 yards. At this point, I'd stopped looking at it emotionally. I just copied the information and archived it on my private server. Meanwhile, I started doing uncharacteristic things. I'd leave at odd times, come home even later than she did. Around her, I started spending way more time on my phone, and when she'd ask, "What are you up to?" I'd say, "Just stuff," and put my phone away. I also changed the logins to all my accounts, so she couldn't access my data. Keep in mind, in all our years of marriage, we'd never hidden anything from each other. But around the time her affair started, she changed her Facebook and phone passwords, claiming she had to because of recent security issues. Yeah, great cover for hiding an affair from your husband. Anyway, I let Ozzy in on my plan, and I also told my older and only sister and 2 of my closest friends what was going on. These are people I'd trust with my life, and I made them swear to keep it a secret. For context, Ozzy and I have been friends since childhood. Our other friends, Joey and Nina, have known us since high school. Pay attention to Nina, she'll play a role later. July rolls around, and my wife is fully paranoid. She's texting and calling me way more often, asking when I'll be home and what I'm doing. I noticed the seed of doubt I'd planted in her head a month earlier was starting to grow. It was especially noticeable in her communication with her lover. She told him about her doubts and confusion, saying, I was becoming cold and distant. The nerve! In their conversations, she suggested they stop meeting at our house because she had no idea when I'd be home. Which confirmed, yes, she'd been bringing this jerk to our house. Thanks, Anna. In one of their conversations, Mark asked her if she was worried I might be cheating on her. Which, of course, pissed her off. I can't even describe how much joy and laughter that exchange brought me. My wife cheating on me, arguing with her lover about whether she's mad that her husband might be cheating on her. The irony. For the record, I wasn't cheating. When I left the house, I was usually hanging out with Ozzy or Joey. We'd drink, watch fights, or I'd be at my sister's with her husband, who's like an older brother to me. My sister's 52, her husband's 58. She'd told him about my wife's affair, but didn't mention my plan. I couldn't risk it because he's a talker. Fast forward to October. That's when things got serious. I've been in my fake affair for 3 months now, and Anna realizes I'm actively pulling away from her. From the day I started executing my plan until the day she confronted me on October 20, 2020, I hadn't even touched her. No hugs, no kisses, no intimacy, nothing. But she didn't really need it, since she was still sleeping with the dirtbag just now, at his place or in motels. So that day, she calls me at work and asks me to come home right after, saying we need to have an important talk. I'll be honest, part of me thought she was going to confess to the affair. But of course, that didn't happen. Instead, I come home, and she asks me if I'm unhappy with her. The nerve. She points out that I've been spending too much time away from home, not showing her any affection, and that our intimacy has completely disappeared. She says she's worried I'm pushing her away because of how she treated me while I was recovering from my knee injury. And then she added the funniest part. She actually asked if I was cheating on her. Guys, I collapsed on the floor and started laughing hysterically. And when I say hysterically, I mean Joker-level laughter. To her, it probably looked like I was laughing at the mere thought of being unfaithful. But of course, I was laughing at the irony of what was happening right in front of me. I rolled around on the floor in tears for about 5 minutes before I could calm down enough to respond. I sat up, looked her in the eyes for the first time in months, shook my head, but didn't give her an answer. I stood up, brushed myself off, kissed the top of her head, and went about my business. Later that night, in my office, I thought, why not check what she's writing to Mark? I opened the app, and sure enough, they were texting. She tells her lover, I know he's cheating on me. I asked him today, and he just laughed in my face. He fell on the floor and rolled around for 5 minutes. He doesn't care about my feelings anymore. I don't know why, but he's checked out. I know I've lost him. It's karma. I know. The smile that spread across my face at that moment probably resembled the Cheshire Cat's. She was breaking. Mark tried to comfort her, saying if I loved her, she wouldn't have had to turn to him for what I wasn't giving her. But the tone of her responses made it clear she was already doubting. She'd had the nerve to cheat on me because I couldn't fulfill my husbandly duties due to a real injury. And she'd carried on the affair for almost a year. And now, the mere thought of losing me to another woman was making her falter. What a weakling. At the same time, I was also working on the second part of my plan, getting my finances in order. In September, I met with a family law attorney to start the divorce process. With the mountain of evidence I'd gathered by then, in New York, divorces fall into 2 categories: fault and no fault. The sheer amount of proof of Anna's infidelity practically guaranteed I could corner her in court. My lawyer advised me to get all my financial affairs in order ahead of the asset division. But I went a step further and secretly drained our joint account, transferring the money to my personal account. I also started looking for an apartment as part of phase 2 of the plan. By November, I hadn't changed my behavior. In fact, I doubled down. This is where my friend Nina comes into play. For context, Nina and Anna were never particularly close. I met Nina in my first year of high school, 2 years before I met Anna. Even back then, Anna saw Nina as a threat because Nina was my closest female friend. There was always this unspoken tension, like Anna didn't trust her. She never said it outright, but it was obvious to anyone who knew us. In turn, Nina was never a big fan of Anna. Early in my relationship with Anna, Nina pointed out how Anna was forcing her way into our friend group while I wasn't doing the same with hers. It annoyed Nina because she knew why Anna was doing it, because of her. To this day, Anna's friends don't include a single guy other than Mark. Meanwhile, Nina remains the only girl in my friend group. Nina had been stuck abroad due to the pandemic for a while and finally returned to New York on November 3. Ozzy, Joey, and I decided to celebrate her return with a dinner and drinks at Joey's place. There were just 5 of us: Ozzy, Joey and his wife, who's also Nina's sister, Nina, and me. Being the sly fox she is, Nina came up with a devilish plan to mess with Anna. She suggested we take some photos in the same vein as the ones I'd found of Anna and Mark months earlier and post them on my Facebook. And that's exactly what we did. On November 5, Anna found out. I think a few of our mutual friends saw my posts and noticed how uncomfortably close I was with Nina. It really threw her off because Anna was still convinced I was cheating on her. I'm pretty sure she wanted to blame Nina, but she knew Nina had spent most of the year in Europe. That didn't stop her from trying to confront me that night about how, as she put it, I was being too touchy in those photos. I saw this as a perfect opportunity to strike the first blow. I said, "What about those photos of you and Mark last year? He was pretty touchy too, but I didn't lose my mind over it." She was stunned. This was the first time I'd even mentioned that guy's name. The gears in her head were turning as she tried to come up with an excuse for those photos. Up until that point, she didn't even know I'd seen them. I rarely use Facebook. When I do post something, it's a big deal. Which explains why the photos with Nina caused such a stir in our circles. And here's what she came up with. Yeah, he's like that with everyone. He's just a friendly guy. I get how it looks, but there's nothing between us. I'm sorry if those photos upset you. I'll delete them. I replied, No, it's not about the photos. It's about you sleeping with this guy for a year while lying to me about working late and hanging out with friends. That's what upset me. From that night on, she became incredibly affectionate and clingy toward me. Like, annoyingly so. She tried to show me affection and initiate intimacy. But I ignored her at every opportunity. I kept archiving everything she wrote to Mark. By this point, I'd long since become numb. Any desire I might have had to save our marriage was dead. I checked out of that game the day I launched phase 1 of my plan. She wrote to Mark that things had only gotten worse, that she didn't know what to do, and that she felt like I just hated her. I did hate her. And then came the turning point. She told him she couldn't see him anymore. She was overwhelmed with guilt and felt like karma was choking her. She couldn't risk losing me. She said she deeply loved Mark, but was still in love with me and needed to save her marriage. No, sweetheart, you're about 8 months too late, I thought. Mark lost it, saying all sorts of sweet things like, he doesn't love you like I do, or you're making a mistake. You can't just throw away what we have. Throughout November and December, Anna was stuck in limbo. She was trying to figure out what was going on in my head, but still couldn't tell if I was actually cheating on her. Meanwhile, Mark kept blowing up her phone daily, but she wasn't responding. I'd often catch her checking her phone and then quickly putting it away. Meanwhile, phase 2 of my plan was complete. The divorce papers were ready. I'd found myself a little studio apartment in the Bronx and signed a 2-year lease. All my money was in my personal account. I was ready to deliver the final blow. Thanksgiving Day arrived. My older son and his girlfriend decided to host a small dinner for our immediate family. It was them, her parents. She's an only child, me, Anna, and our younger son. We had a great evening. My son's girlfriend is training to be a chef, and she cooked everything herself. That girl can cook, damn it! Since I had to keep up the appearance that things were fine between me and Anna, I showed her some affection a few times that night. A kiss on the cheek, a sweet hug, holding her from behind. She was thrilled by these gestures. Mind you, this was the first time I'd touched her since kissing the top of her head that night in October when she confronted me. It had been almost 2 months since then. I won't lie, it disgusted me to do it, but it was necessary. I couldn't risk the plan. My distance from her in front of our sons, my son's girlfriend, and her parents would have raised questions. That definitely puzzled her, but she didn't ask questions. I sure as hell wasn't going to have unprotected sex with her, knowing she'd been doing it with Mark for months. The next morning, I woke up and checked my spy app first thing. For the first time in weeks, she'd responded to Mark. The guy went all out. He confessed his love for her, said she was wasting her time trying to rekindle a flame that had died with me, that she'd been in a cage with me for 23 years and deserved the love and care of a man who'd appreciate her. And remember, this guy's only 5 years older than our son. He's so hung up on a 45-year-old woman that he decided to destroy our marriage and the home we built for this guy. She responded to him with pretty much the same thing she'd said the last time they talked. She loved him and enjoyed their relationship, but couldn't lose me. I was still the love of her life, but he'd always have a place in her heart. She offered to stay friends if he wanted, but their physical relationship was over. He begged her to meet him one more time. And, as you've probably guessed, she agreed. One last time for old time's sake. Yeah, who am I to judge her? I'd done the same thing the night before. Of course, I added all this to the archive I'd been building. On December 4, Phase 3, and the final phase of my plan began. The divorce papers were in my hands. My new place was ready. Now I needed to start gradually moving my things out of the house. But first, I had to tell my sons. On Friday night, I called my older son over, invited both of them into my office, and told them everything. Without going into too much detail, I explained that their mother had been cheating on me for over a year and that I'd be filing for divorce soon. My younger son was especially shaken by this because he'd recently gone through a betrayal in his own relationship. His first girlfriend had cheated on him just 4 months earlier. Seeing his heart break a second time, because his own mother was capable of this, was tough. My oldest son took it much more calmly and offered to have his brother stay with him until things settled down. I agreed. We packed up some of my younger son's things, and he asked me, "Will you be okay?" I said, "Yes, son. I'll be okay, and so will you. We'll be okay. I promise." And off they went. The hardest part was over. It was time to bring out the nuclear option. I packed up all the things I wanted to take with me. These were items Anna wouldn't notice missing right away. I also bought myself a new phone and a new number, letting everyone who needed to know, Ozzy, Joey, Nina, my sons, my sister, and my mom. My new contacts. Meanwhile, I kept Anna in the dark. On December 16, I sent packages containing proof of her infidelity to everyone I thought needed to see it. Her parents, her sisters, her brother, her HR department at work, since Mark worked at the same company, and they had policies against coworker relationships, a few of her friends, and Mark's parents. I packed all of it into 14 folders, wrapped them like gifts, and sent them off. The estimated delivery date was December 22, 24. Perfect? Christmas Eve arrived. Anna came home at her usual time. No idea if she'd seen Mark. I'd stopped monitoring her through the app on December 18, deciding I'd gathered enough. As usual, she showered, spent a little time with me. I messed around with her on the living room couch. I know, I'm still Anne, and she went to bed. The final phase was finally approaching. The nuclear bomb I'd been building since June was about to detonate. In the middle of the night, I woke up, wrapped one of the 3 remaining folders in gift wrap, attached the divorce papers to the inside of the cover, and placed it on my side of the bed with a note, "Merry Christmas." Next to it, I left my old phone and my lawyer's business card. I packed up the last of my essentials, which fit into 2 backpacks, and left the home I'd lived in for 23 years. All of this happened a week ago. To Anna, I've completely disappeared off the radar. Gone. She's blocked on my Facebook, but for some reason, she hasn't blocked me yet, so I can still watch the fallout. It's glorious. My packages reached everyone I sent them to, and Anna is catching hell. Her younger sister tore into her. Her parents aren't happy either. My mom absolutely destroyed her. I knew my mom could be vicious, but what she said to Anna was just brutal. Anna is desperately trying to find out where I am, but the people who know aren't saying a word. Her Facebook is filled with attempts to reach out to me because I assume she realizes I'm probably watching. But I won't say a word to her without my lawyer present. That'll be the only time I breathe the same air as her. She has no way to twist this and make me the bad guy. And, according to a mutual friend who works at her company, Anna and Mark are being put on unpaid leave starting tomorrow. So, chances are, she'll start 2021 without a job. As for the remaining 2 folders, I gave one to my lawyer as final evidence for the upcoming divorce, and I kept the other to burn in a bonfire at Joey's once the divorce is finalized. Do I feel guilty about this? Not one bit. For 23 years, I was loyal to this woman. I gave her the home she dreamed of, the family she wanted, the life I thought we both deserved. And I loved her unconditionally. I never let her down, never cheated, never even thought about breaking my vows. When there was a problem I thought was affecting our marriage, I'd come to her and talk about it, and we'd work through it as best we could. She chose to find comfort in another man's bed instead of coming to me and saying she was unhappy with our intimacy. In that moment, she chose to go to a younger guy. So no, I don't feel an ounce of pity for her or for what I've done. Let her burn in hell. I don't care. The only things I stand to lose are our house, the car, and maybe a few $100 a month in alimony. But given that the divorce is being filed on grounds of infidelity, and New York allows for fault-based divorce in certain cases, she probably won't get alimony either, thanks to the mountain of evidence I've provided. Christmas was the first full day I spent in my new apartment. There's still some work to do to make it feel like home, but overall, I've settled in, since I'll be here for at least 2 years. My sons and my older son's girlfriend came over and spent most of the day at my place. His girlfriend brought homemade sweets and cooked a delicious dinner. I had a chance to have a real conversation with my sons, something I hadn't done in a long time, and it was nice. My older sister also came by with treats and spent time with us. It was the first time in almost a year she'd seen her nephews. Having all these people around helped me process my emotions, because if I'd been alone, I probably would have just gotten drunk. Everyone left around 8:00 p.m. and I decided to visit Joey and his wife Claudia. I spent a couple of hours with them, had a few drinks, and headed home. The next big event happened on December 29, 2020. Around midday, I got a text from Nina asking if I was free that evening. Of course I was, and we agreed to meet after work. She came over, and we went to a diner near my office in New York. Restaurants were operating at 25% capacity due to the pandemic, but finding a seat wasn't hard since many people still preferred to stay home. So when we sat down and ordered, Nina laid all her cards on the table. Though, honestly, I knew it was coming. She admitted she'd had feelings for me since we were teenagers, but never had the chance to say anything because Anna swooped in before she could confess. For context, I've known Nina 2 years longer than I've known Anna. As I mentioned, she was the fourth link in our quartet. Me, Ozzy, Joey, and her. In school, we were the outcasts, the ones who didn't fit in anywhere. Back then, Nina had weight issues and was diabetic. She was a full-on goth girl who was super cool but didn't get any attention from guys. But there was always chemistry between us. Now, Nina's a personal trainer and yoga instructor. She was the ugly duckling who turned into a beautiful swan, if you will. Long story short, we decided that once my divorce was finalized, we'd start dating. And yes, I slept with her that night. We went back to my new apartment and had a great time. Do I feel ashamed about it? Hell no. Nina's been a better friend to me than Anna ever was in the nearly quarter century I've known Nina. She's always had my back, and I learned that day that she'd even consciously stepped aside to let me build a life with Anna. That touched me deeply. That level of self-sacrifice for someone else that's true love. Yeah, I know some might say I'm moving on too fast. But as far as I'm concerned, my marriage ended the day Anna let him touch her. So, I've been ready for a while. This is the end. My divorce is in process, and I'm starting a new relationship with Nina. I know in one of my comments, I said I'd probably never get married again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings. And I can't deny that I feel the same way. We'll take it slow, won't announce our relationship until the divorce with Anna is finalized and legally done. As for Anna, I don't care what happens to her. Let Mark move into our old house. I don't care. I'll get the money for half the house in 4 quarterly payments throughout 2021, and I'll never have to see her again. On April 13, exactly 1 month ago, Anna officially became my ex-wife. At first, my lawyer told me it would happen on the 18th, but partly because New York was starting to ease pandemic restrictions, everything wrapped up a few days earlier. My lawyer, Jeff, called me on April 12 and asked me to come in the next day. When I arrived, he handed me the notice of the finalized divorce and shook my hand. I couldn't just leave, so I hugged him and thanked him for everything he'd done for me. On the way home, I mentally replayed the last 24 years of my life. All the memories, all the history. When I walked into my apartment, it finally hit me. I collapsed on the floor, and all the emotions I'd been holding back came pouring out. I hadn't cried like that in years. But these weren't tears of sadness. Not at all. My soul felt free after being trapped in the deepest, darkest abyss. That evening, I called my older son. I briefly told him everything was finalized, and that his mother and I were no longer married as of that day. He asked how I was feeling. I think he heard the tears in my voice, and I told him I was okay. Then my 17-year-old son got on the phone, and we talked for almost an hour and a half. My older son and his fiancée are taking great care of him, and he, like me, is still seeing a therapist. I won't go into details about what we talked about, but I'll say he still has a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to how he views relationships. Later that night, Nina came over, and of course, I shared the news with her. She just wrapped her arms around my waist and held me tight as I cried again. When I calmed down, Nina said that no matter what happened, she'd never betray me and would love me with all her heart. I know every word she said was true. Some might judge me for this. But I don't regret the life I built with Anna, despite everything she did. After all, She gave me two amazing sons. But now it's clear I chose the wrong woman. Nina, in the last 4.5 months, has given me so much and asked for nothing in return. All she wants is for me to be by her side. I don't want to go on about her too much, but she's truly my hero. After the divorce was finalized, other interesting things happened. For example, Mark reached out to me. Turns out, he saw this story as soon as it went viral on Reddit and immediately recognized himself. The first thing he did was apologize. He told me what happened after his mother received the folder I'd sent her. Essentially, he was disowned. His mother, as I'd learned while planning my revenge, is a devout Catholic who goes to church 3 times a week. Finding out her son had destroyed a marriage that had lasted nearly a quarter of a century enraged her. She kicked him out that same day, and within a week, when his employer also received the folder, he was fired. Since then, he's been couch surfing at friends' places and trying to find a new job. I'll admit, I could have completely destroyed this guy, but I didn't. I asked him when he'd last seen Anna, and he said it had been months. The last time they spoke, Anna told him to forget about her and move on. As far as I remember, Anna said the same thing the last time we spoke. So at least she wasn't lying about that. I asked him a few more questions, and the guy was surprisingly candid. I think he was looking for some kind of redemption for the chaos he'd brought upon himself. A lot of what he said matched the information I'd gathered from the messages I'd archived. I didn't say much, but I asked him a lot of questions. The conversation lasted about 20 minutes. After that, he apologized again, and then I told him this, copying and pasting from our chat. You're a 27-year-old guy who's going to have to live with the fact that your own mother now hates you for destroying a marriage that lasted almost as long as you've been alive. I know you reached out because your conscience is eating at you, but I'm not going to give you comfort. When I was 27, I was building my future. Right now, you're a homeless, jobless homewrecker. If you're smart, you'll learn from this. If not, you'll stay a loser until you're my age, if you even make it that far. I'd wish you luck, but you don't need it. What you need is to rebuild your life. With that, I ended the conversation and blocked him. That's clearly not what he was expecting. And I could have been a lot more hostile, but I think those words were enough to make him think. On May 4, 2021, another big event happened. Nina now carries my last name. Over the last 2 months, we've had long discussions about where we want to go in our relationship. Nina made it clear she doesn't plan to be with anyone but me and wants to take my last name. She wants to be my wife and wants me to accept her daughter, let's call her Anna, as my own. I adore that little girl. She just turned 6 months old. Her birthday was last month, and she absolutely adores me. I'm the first father figure in her life, as her biological dad left when she was 4. Nina deliberately didn't introduce Anna to any man she dated after her divorce, unless he had long-term potential. Clearly, I have that potential, and I have experience raising kids. And by the way, Anna and my younger son are like 2 peas in a pod. Their sibling relationship is both amazing and heartwarming. My younger son has become very attached to Anna. I've talked about this with my therapist, and he said it's definitely a good sign. So, last Monday, we decided to go to the city clerk's office and make it official. It took 24 hours to get the marriage certificate. It was funny breaking the news to everyone. Ozzy said, "Yeah, who's surprised?" And my older sister added, now taking bets on when the baby announcement post will come. We thought we'd kept our relationship under wraps all these months, but apparently everyone had already figured it out. So, yeah, it was pretty hilarious. Some might say we got married too soon. And yeah, I've said in comments that I'd probably never get married again. But that was before Nina confessed her feelings. And I can't deny that I feel the same way. This woman lay in my arms, crying tears of joy, saying she never thought in her life she'd get a chance to be with me. She told me in detail how she'd felt about me all these 25 years and how, even while married, she regretted that Anna had won. Honestly, I had no idea how deeply she felt. She even admitted that, at times, she'd thought about having an affair with me but couldn't bring herself to be a homewrecker. And despite everything, over all these years, she's given me so much and asked for so little in return. Even the woman I married, the mother of my 2 children, never showed me as much love as Nina has. I'd be a fool not to give her my last name. Now, she carries it, and we're in the early stages of the adoption process for Anna. Finally, about Anna. I haven't spoken to her since the last time I was in our house. That was almost 4 months ago, but mutual friends occasionally update me about her. One of them, a realtor, told me she sold the house, and he gave her a job at his firm as an administrative assistant. And by doing that, he canceled the alimony I was supposed to pay her due to her unemployment. Now she lives in a small apartment near his office, which he also helped her find. She's a shadow of the woman she used to be. Anna's barely gained any weight and keeps to herself. She comes to the office, does her job, and doesn't interact with anyone except this friend. Probably because, as you know, her interactions with coworkers at her last job led to all of this. The last time I heard about her was at the end of March. I thanked her friend for looking out for her, but said I didn't need updates on her life anymore. She's no longer my problem. I'm pretty sure she knows about Nina and me, as some of our remaining mutual friends have already commented on it. Since my younger son will be an adult in a year, I have no reason to ever speak to her again. And I won't. That's it. My story is over. Thank you sincerely for the kind wishes. So, feel free to share your thoughts on this whole story in the comments. I can understand the author, and yes, he was treated harshly. But putting myself in his shoes, I completely understand his motives. On the other hand, sending all those folders to relatives and her workplace, that feels like overkill to me. After all, it's your personal business. Why air that dirty laundry for everyone to see? Is that even legal? I tried Googling it, and apparently, in New York State, such actions violate privacy laws when correspondence is shared at work without the consent of the parties involved. And while, as I understand it, the chances of winning a case like this are slim, it's still some kind of violation. I don't get why he had to adopt someone else's child. He could have just lived under the same roof and that's it. Otherwise, if he and Nina end up splitting, he'd have to take full financial responsibility for her daughter. It's a strange move. After all, it's someone else's child. Do you agree with me, or do you have a different opinion? Thanks for watching this video to the end. Check out our previous video, which you'll find right here. Be sure to subscribe to our channel because we'll have more long stories like this. And good luck.